Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Jens Heitland Show, where I interview experts from different fields to connect the dots of innovation and entrepreneurship. Today's guest is technology trend researcher and author of several books. He's Austrian living in Silicon Valley. Please welcome to the show, Mario Herger. Hello, Mario. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hello again. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you. Great to have another German on the on the show. But you're not really German from a mindset perspective. That's why I'm really looking forward into our conversation today. So before we go into, of course, technology, innovation, Silicon Valley mindset, and a couple of books you have been written, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What are you about?
Well, I've been living for 20 years in the Silicon Valley. This is the San Francisco Bay Area. It's about an area of 80 kilometers, 60 miles, so to speak. San Francisco in the north and San Jose at the bottom. About 3.5 million people live there. And then when you take the East Bay to it, we have in Santa Cruz and Marin County, we have about 10, 12 million people. And you know this area because, a lot of the tools that we're using, like Google, like Apple devices, like Zoom, are coming from here. And I'm originally from Vienna, Austria. I have moved there in 2001, just short 2 weeks after September 11th. It's another story, actually. And I worked at SAP as a software developer. Although I never studied software engineering, I'm not a software engineer. I'm a chemical engineer, actually. But I did big data modeling in the business warehouse and moved then over here and worked for 15 years for SAP, the German software company. And of course, one of the things to do at the SAP labs in Palo Alto was to look at what are the new technologies that are coming and influencing a software company like SAP. And that question became a larger one as I saw then meeting, German delegations, people from Europe, from all over the world, visiting Silicon Valley, trying to understand what are they doing that they're always coming up with, they're pulling another thing out of their head and it's just rolling over us. We have to adapt to that. We have to find new laws. We suddenly our industry is going downhills. And so I'm trying to figure out what are the new things that are coming and what are the people in Silicon Valley doing differently?
So yeah, super interesting story. And sorry for saying German. That's not fine if you're an Austrian.
I'm fine with that. I'm good.
I always still struggle with that. But yeah, super interesting. So of course, Silicon Valley, for everyone who is working with and around innovation, is kind of the hotbed of innovation and was over the last 20 years. So because you're there now for quite some years, what did you explore and how was it arriving there as a European? Let's start from the beginning. Like, what was the biggest difference you experienced when you arrived?
Well, the first time I visited SAP Labs on a business travel was I couldn't find the location because I didn't have a map. I thought Silicon Valley, please, this is probably a small village, so I may find it easily. And then I see three exits to Palo Alto, and I thought, oh my God. So I was driving around just out of good luck, and then I'm out of the town, suddenly seeing all the horses and the prairie, and I stumble on the street where SAP is and said, I want to work there, where I can look out of the SAP office and see horses passing by. So definitely the landscape is very different. But then over time, I realized being embedded in this German company, so I was not really a fish out of water, so to speak. I came from a German culture into a German culture that was transplanted in Silicon Valley. But then you start reading the newspapers and these free papers that are out there, and you read all the time about Google and Facebook because these are the local industries here. Yeah? While in Germany, Heidelberg, you talk about SAP, you talk about Heidelberger Druck, Heidelberger Cement. or wherever you are, it's your local company. But here you have those companies suddenly being the local companies, and you realize that your impression of what those companies are is very different from what they really are, because you read it through the filter of a German newspapers and TV, as always it's a kind of threatening model. You're the threatening company,
Yeah,
and
the
then you're
bad
here,
guys.
and people who work. Your neighbor works there. Your other neighbor is a venture capitalist. Across the street is some garage startup. Yeah, and you realize suddenly, actually, that was probably the biggest change. I could do that too. Yeah, because you see these role models when you work at SAP in Heidelberg, for example. You have everywhere SAP folks. So your world is SAP. Yeah, maybe American military, maybe Heidelberger Druck, as I mentioned already, but here you're embedded into a very different crowd of people. And the way they react towards ideas, which was also new to me, was that they were not saying, Mario, why are you doing that? You're a chemical engineer. So come on, you wanted the software startup? This is ridiculous. Yeah. No, they take your idea and give feedback or just play with it. Yeah. And I think that is one of the where your mind will go explodes. And I changed. I had to change. Underwent those changes as everyone else, and so that's why I understand also people who are coming there and struggling with that. That's what I'm trying to tell them, and basically line them out. What are those things that you should do in order to open your own mindset to become like Silicon Valley spirit that you bring into your company?
Yeah. Then I've been living in a couple of countries and traveled quite a bit. For me, it was always the first couple of months is like honeymoon, and you're just like, oh my God, this is the best country, the best city to live in. It's all is good. But then it's kind of, yeah, you still need to work, and it's kind of, it's good. Yes, it's different. Yes, but it's kind of, yeah, honeymoon is over. How was that for
there
you?
were a couple of things that at the beginning you struggled with. First, you don't know what are the supermarkets here. Yeah, I mean, you have in Germany, you have Aldi, yeah, you have this kind of supermarket, penny market, and so on, whatever is there. But here, what are the supermarket names? Where are they? Yeah, and they're not in downtown. Yeah, they're somewhere else that you have to find. And once you found, so it took me 2 weeks to find a real supermarket. Not that I was hunting for that, but I passed by. Thought, oh, that looks like this could be a supermarket. Oh, it's called Safeway. Okay, I'll go there the next time. And then you're in there, and then you go through the aisles. Let's say detergent, laundry detergent. And then you're there and say, and you don't know the brands, and then you're there and okay, you know Omo, Persil, all these brands in Germany, but here, what the heck? Which one should I take? Which one is the right one for me? So you undergo a very different learning process, and then of course, you have not just 2 cash registers open like in a German supermarket if you're lucky, but you have like 20. Them open, and then you is this now fake or should I go to that where the lady is waving at me, telling me come in? No, this is probably a hoax. She's just trying to to trick me to something. So you go to the one where there's a lie there until you learn. And then small talk, of course. How are you doing? When Americans say how are you doing, they don't mean how are you doing. They mean hello. So if you as a stupid German come in there and say, oh, I'm not feeling that well. You see already the cashier and just a lady grabbing the telephone, calling security because you're telling her stuff that you shouldn't.
Yeah, that's a great start. Yeah, I can see that. So going a little bit more into, you're a technology trend researcher. Just to establish a little bit of what that is, and for people who have never heard about that terms, what are you doing, and how does that work?
Yeah, it's always a lengthier description. I'm trying to keep it short. So one of my tasks at SAP the last like 7-8 years was to observe technology startups and other companies coming out with technologies and trying to evaluate it. What does it mean for SAP? And when I left SAP in 2013, I decided, well, how about I do that on my own and, do my own consultancy, look at that, and I write books on that. So I look at topics that I'm thinking interesting, that I find interesting, and maybe there are other people who find it interesting. And one of those things, for example, was autonomous and electric vehicles. There's Tesla in Fremont, just 10 minutes from where I live, and then you have about 800 autonomous vehicles from 55 companies driving on public roads. And so I can't go to a cafe and, my morning cafe, I'm from Vienna, so I need a morning coffee with a croissant, without passing at least one of those experimental autonomous vehicles. And when I tell that, then visitors from Europe, or I tell them at a conference about that, they don't believe that. And they think, because they see this filter through the German media mostly, they think it's 10, 20 years away, this technology. And then I'm there and I'm seeing them just passing by. I can touch that car here and see that. And so I this is what I'm looking at. Said, okay, this technology is here. It's farther developed than you think. Here they are. Now, what would be the consequences if we have that, let's say, in Hamburg or in Munich or in Heidelberg or in Paris, wherever, driving around? What would it mean? What are the jobs that are being created? What are the jobs that are being destroyed? What would it mean for public transport? What would it mean for the street infrastructure? Do we need street light, traffic signals? Yeah. Do we need traffic signs anymore? Because these are all digital things. Yeah. What about accidents, crashes, injuries, fatalities? Do we need? Can we shrink the hospital system, the medical system? And that's what I'm trying to describe as a technology trend researcher, to give you an idea where we are, the status, where it is going, an approximation when it will be here, and what you would have to do today.
I'm having trouble connecting to the internet.
Yeah,
it
she's
looks like
talking.
a router issue, so try restarting it. Unplug the router. Wait 10 seconds.
Sorry, my Alexa just talked.
I love it. I just got an Alexa this week.
Yeah, well, I don't know why she. I think she told me that she cannot connect to the internet. So. Well, these are the things that I have here too. So, and maybe talking about Alexa and so, that means also I'm not only seeing it, I'm also trying out that stuff. So I have Alexa, I have Google Home, I have a 3D printer, I have a Tesla myself, because you need to experience that. Reading about that is one thing, like reading about somebody holding the hand over the candle, like that. Or seeing somebody doing that, or doing it yourself, and then you suddenly realize, oh my God, that's what this technology means, and how could I use it in my own company? How could I use it for my own purposes? And that suddenly gives you much better grounds to make better decisions today for the future. And that is what I try to do as a technology trend researcher.
So you then work with large companies who are interested into understanding that picture. It's like the impact on their business, the impact on the society in their countries, wherever they operate, and so on.
Not only big companies, also a lot of small and medium businesses. So I regularly have delegations out of, the CEOs, owners, innovation managers, product managers, evangelists, digital evangelists, journalists, politicians, that are coming from all parts of Europe, from Brazil. From Brazil, I have a lot of Brazilian guests somehow, but also Asia, and they're trying to understand what it means for them. And sometimes, actually, small and medium businesses have it easier to react because there is not these big hierarchies, like 15 decision makers in between, like at a big company, but they can often react very fast. What I think I'm adding as a value often also is I'm not corporate blind. That means if you work in a corporate in a company, you see a lot of stuff inside your company. You see a lot of stuff inside your industry. That's why you know a lot. But often the disruption or the influence comes from outside the industry that you had not on the radar. I can give you an example. Yeah, I was invited 2 years ago at a secret society of cigarette paper makers. There is a secret society. I mean, this is an association where all the cigarette paper makers, those who make the machines, those who make the paper, and everything around it, meet for a casual weekend. This is one networking event. And then they invite some people such as me to entertain them in the morning, the clown on the stage, so to speak.
Yeah.
and cigarette paper is actually a very interesting technology because it is has a higher quality, has higher quality standards than bank notes. Because the way the production happens, it is so fast that the paper has to follow a certain standard, otherwise it would rip and stop the production process. But anyways, I'm dissecting here. But I asked them, after talking about electric and autonomous cars, I told them, how will autonomous or electric cars influence your cigarette paper business? And they said, well, when you have autonomous cars, maybe people have now more time and they smoke in the car, or maybe they're less stressed because they're not on the road rage, so they may smoke less. And I said, so look at that. I have a Tesla. I've been driving a Tesla. Since I have a Tesla, I've not been charged at home. Where do you sell most of your cigarettes? Turns out 40% of all cigarettes are sold at gas stations.
Oops.
So if I'm not going to a gas station anymore,
Yeah.
you're not selling cigarettes anymore there. Yeah. And even if if one distribution channel like this disappears, but is caught up by other distribution channels, it's never going to be all the 40%. Yeah. So you suddenly have a disruption in the automotive industry that hits you as a cigarette paper maker.
Yeah.
And that is something that I do because I see so many industries, so many different companies that I can look at where they look, what could be things that influence them. And they may never have heard about that. Yeah. And then suddenly see these connections. Yeah, oh my God, we have to look into this. Yeah. And that's often a very interesting and fun experience for all of us.
Yeah. And I can just imagine, if you're working in that industry, you don't have that on your radar if you're not looking forward into what can happen, what can disrupt that, and then meet people like you who have the understanding of the implications of the new technology trends coming. It's
exactly so often you mean people, of course, are very busy in their companies. Yeah, they have a lot of work on their desk, a lot to do. And just taking the time, like half an hour a day, to look into new stuff. Yeah, often you spend that then looking at, okay, what is the competitor doing? What maybe certain things from other industries I know immediately of how I could use that. But often you don't have the luxury and the time to look at really outside the industry, something that you think has nothing ever to do with you. Yeah. But the idea is really that you need to build that up as a little infrastructure inside your company, that you have people, looking at VR, looking at IoT, looking at 3D printing, looking at artificial intelligence, trying to figure that out and trying to make the connection to our own industry. What would it mean? And the earlier you make that, and the more you encourage that, the more likely you find suddenly solutions and new offerings and services that you may have for your own clients. And when something then really starts getting into the mainstream and everyone is doing that, even your competitors, you already are steps ahead and have done that like 3 or 4 times before, iterated on that, had first prototypes. So for you, it's not coming as a surprise. You already built up a little bit of an expertise. You may even have hired somebody that knows more about that. And then you can basically already accelerate from that point on and be faster than your own competitors.
Yeah. It's so important. I work with large companies on innovation culture and really helping them to unleash that internally as well. But it's even the same crucial like working with the external world. If you don't have anyone who is following these trends or is an expert in that, depending on your business size. So before we go into Silicon Valley mindset, which I would like to explore with you, what is one of the biggest trends happening or you see on the horizon, which only a few have on the radar right now?
So a trend that is not yet a trend, has often no name. So it's difficult to describe of what those things are, because there are no names. When I look at, for example, artificial intelligence, which has become already kind of something a lot of people know that this is important, that this is a so-called general purpose technology like electricity that or computers, that it will be affecting all areas. We are a lot of people are still at the beginning of that, but the technology itself is at the beginning. The way it is today done is very 17th century, like electricity in the 17th century or 18th century. We don't really understand it. And it takes a lot of effort, and we don't really know yet what are the use cases for that. But we are seeing already things that are coming out of that, that where it will change so dramatically the way we deal with it, and so fast that it's very difficult to forecast how it will look like. Given that we are talking about then the underlying hardware, such as quantum computing, which is for many people so far away and ununderstandable. How does it really work? We've understood now finally. Most of us have a concept of how a computer works. Bits and pieces that you have there, zeros and ones, and still it's magic for most people. But quantum computing is just a different level of magic, so to speak. This is so weird, the way it works, that most people don't really have an idea of how will we ever use that in a small and bit, or I as a consumer, how will I ever be using that thing? And so I think while quantum computing is still a realm of the big companies and research, we should, if you're a small and medium business, or a big corporation, you should try to begin understanding that. And I understand there's not good literature that dumps it down for the rest of us. I've tried to. I'm not a quantum physicist. I'm a chemical engineer. I've studied economics as well, but I have to go multiple times through that. I have to understand, find out what are the metaphors, what are the analogies that help me to understand it better. And then once I understood that, now I have to understand, how can I use that in my case? How would it help artificial intelligence? So maybe, and I'm just saying maybe, I'm not announcing it, maybe one of my next books is dealing with quantum computing. So I'm looking for a artificial intelligence book, a sequel for my first one, and I think quantum computing becomes a larger part in that. But first, I have to wrap my mind around it and try to understand it, and I'm not very smart on that thing.
Yeah, but that's maybe just the exciting thing as a technology researcher, going into these topics and trying to simplify it for like the ordinary people like myself. Because I think that's the interesting part, when you get people starting to understand the complexity and something that's not there yet. And I even think, like, going to the topic and maybe as well talking about your book, it's like the automotive and the self-driving cars. Even this for me is not understood. I mean, I'm far away of understanding what that means and what the impact of that will be, because I mean, you said it, living in Germany, you don't see that. you're happy if you see a Tesla, and that's now growing a little bit electrical cars because it's supported in different ways right now. But it's far away. I mean, I was living in Sweden or in Denmark before. It's way higher than in Germany. But it's tell us a little bit about the part of your book as well.
Well, I'm trying to find always make it relatable for people. Yeah. So I understood that you can't just throw data at people and like German engineers would do. You have to go through all the technical details. That's not helping. You need to tell stories around it and what it would mean. Yeah. How such a technology changes your life and our life in the positive sides and the negative side. And I focus a lot, of course, on the positive sides because this is maybe one large difference in the mindset. When you look at the discussion on technology in a country like Germany, a country of engineers, we have twice as many engineers per capita than other countries such as the United States or China. And we're very proud of our German engineering, but then we are so afraid of other people's engineering that we are only seeing, because we're not understanding it, the first thing we realize and see is the dangers and the risks that are there. So I'm trying to tell the stories of how it changed our life and from a positive side. So autonomous cars, the first question that always comes, and in Germany, it comes in Europe. I don't need to know on what continent I am or from what continent the audience is. The first question gives it away. And this is always about the trolley problem, namely, how should a car decide whom to kill? I said, we're not building the technology to kill people. We're building it actually to avoid killing people, because today we have in Germany 3,500 people that die every year in traffic accidents. We have 40,000 people that die in the US on road crashes. So we built that for a very specific reason, and also to free people's time not to have the need to drive, but do something else. And looking at that then from all the the first order, the second order, the third order changes that may come out of such a new technology is the interesting stuff. I give you one example. Today in Germany, we have, for example, 3 million traffic lights. One traffic light costs between 35,000 and 250,000 euro. So the communities, the road administration, whoever builds roads and streets and puts all this equipment up there has a lot of money to spend. Now, for whom are those traffic signals and these traffic signs? For humans, because this is how we communicate at an intersection. Okay, I've read, so the others can go, I have to wait. And then the light turns green, I can go, the others have to wait. And still we make errors. Still we drive when we're not supposed to. Now, an autonomous car, given that all the traffic is autonomous, they don't need that anymore, because they can communicate with each other. They can negotiate it like ships on the ocean. There are yield regulations, who is allowed to pass and who not. And cars could. So just imagine that 3 million traffic lights. We don't need 90% of them anymore. A lot of money would be saved for communities. Or 95% of the cars are parked all the time. Only 5% of the vehicle fleet that is in Germany, 50 million cars. We have in the US like 300 million cars. We have more cars than driver license holders. Are just parked, and they need a lot of space. Now, if you have fleets that come in a minute to you, like an Uber, like a taxi, and you don't need to own a car, and you order your 2-seater, your 7-seater, because you want to buy a shelf at IKEA, then you don't need your own car. It just comes the car size that you need, and those cars are not parking. The cars are driving around 10, 12 hours a day. So suddenly, in cities, in urban communities, and even on the countryside, you suddenly can return that space that was used for car parking back to the people, make outside gardens, yeah, make play areas, etc. And suddenly the entire livability, how a city is livable for the population would be so much better. And then these are indications that the people are not focusing on, because they're not thinking that far. They're thinking about, how should I decide, the grandma or the baby? Yeah, but this is the wrong question. The question is not whom to decide whom to kill, but how to avoid killing anyone. And if this were such a question, so important, this question, did you learn it in driving school? Did you ever have to make a test on that? Did you ever practice that? You never have. This is an irrelevant question. It is intellectual masturbation. Yeah, such a question. It's very interesting. I love talking about that and discussing that, but it is completely irrelevant for practical purposes.
I love that. It's so fun. Like I came back to Germany, which is now a year ago, and I see exactly what you're saying. It's brilliant. So digging into that, it's interesting. So from a driverless car perspective, what do you imagine? How far is that what you just explained away from us?
Yeah, so most people don't realize that we have now already one driverless fleet that operates on a commercial basis. So Waymo, the Google sister company, the farthest advanced company, has been operating now for 3 years, since 2018, a robotaxi fleet commercially in Phoenix in Arizona. For now about 2 years, they've been doing it without drivers. So there are no drivers in the car anymore. Of course, it's a small region. It's a relatively well-maintained streets, and it's sunny and good weather all the time. Yeah. But the Wright brothers didn't start flying across the Atlantic with the first thing. Yeah. But over time they flew higher and higher and longer. Yeah. And 20 years later, we crossed the Atlantic basically. Yeah. With that, and today it's so. Now we have in California quite a number of regulations already that allow that. We have now 2 companies that are preparing a robotaxi fleet, a driverless robotaxi fleet for San Francisco. This is Waymo, and the other one is General Motors Cruise. So they already have about, each of them, 100 to 200 cars that are today operating still in test mode. Without passengers, but they got the permit. One of those companies got the permit. The other one is waiting to get the permit. So I expect that not in the second half of this year, we will have 2 additional driverless, and they're allowed to drive driverless fleets in San Francisco. So in total, 3 fleets in the US. If you now look forward, forecast that, extrapolate that, we see the first licenses in China, in Shenzhen, in Beijing, and in Guangzhou by Chinese companies such as Baidu or AutoX, that are trying to do the same and get now also the permit for that. So I expect that we have about next year 5 fleets operating, and then up to 2025, between 25 and 50 fleets. That means in about as many cities across the US and in China. And maybe I expect, I would say between 2023 and 2025, we have the first of these fleets going into a test mode in a European city.
Yeah.
And those companies are not the German or the European companies. These are really the American and maybe the Chinese companies doing that. But you see, it's much closer. And now here comes the thing. Once you start that, you don't start in the entire city. You start at a certain area. Yeah. So it may be downtown Munich. Let's take it as an example. Yeah. And then they may be shutting down and say Munich is. Downtown Munich is only allowed for autonomous vehicles for the fleet. All manual-driven cars are not allowed to enter anymore. And then you immediately get also data on accidents, collisions, fatalities, injuries. Yeah, and when you have those numbers and can compare that and we expect 80 to 90% fewer of these collisions with autonomous vehicles, then the other areas and regions would immediately try to pressure politicians and say, we should get that in our area as well. We want that too. We want our children to be safe. And so this could be coming much faster than you think. The German companies are unfortunately not as far. They are far behind when you look at all the data and on the activities. They may be acquiring or licensing technology, but they have other. There are other reasons why currently the digital companies such as Google or Zoox or General Motors, Cruise, a traditional vendor, are so much ahead.
But then I think then it's if we look now 10 years ahead, that could be possible that you see that more and more and more often. And
Not only that, my book title about autonomous and electric vehicles is called "The Last Driver's License Holder Has Already Been Born."
I 100% agree.
I say manual driving will be prohibited around 2030 to 2035. That means in about 14 years, latest 14 years, you're not going to make a driver's license anymore. You are not even allowed to drive a manual-driven car without autonomous functionality on a public road because you're too dangerous.
I already see all my buddies complaining in Germany.
I know. But I love driving. Yeah, tell me the next time you're on a traffic jam, how much you like that. Yeah. So.
But that's fascinating. So my daughter is right now 3.5 years old. So she most probably will never do a driver's license.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's
so
amazing.
she may be the last one to make a driver's license,
but she will not need it anymore.
Or which is a waste of time. Or if she becomes a race car driver on for closed racetracks, then but then still just think about that, how boring actually today races are, like a Formula One or something like that. It's pretty boring. Now imagine you make autonomous racing. They're actually autonomous racing car series already. You could do that like a Mad Max kind of thing, with flamethrowers and this kind of stuff, because nobody gets hurt. It's just machines. Could be so much more fun.
Now we go into sci-fi.
All the opportunities that you have there.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, looking forward to that. So let's look a little bit into the Silicon mindset, and which is also one of your German books. What is the biggest difference if we now take that a little bit into the corporate world specifically? What is the biggest difference from the Silicon Valley mindset, and if we just go towards a European mindset?
So the biggest mindset difference, I think, is always how you react to a new idea. When I say I'm meaning Germans, Austrians, Europeans, people not from the Silicon Valley. And maybe to say something, we have 60,000 Germans living in the Silicon Valley. So these people are not genetically different than the Germans in Germany, right? They went through the same schools, but it's a mindset, so you can learn that. So one of the biggest differences is how to really deal with a new idea and be open about that. So in Germany, we would go first probably and look all the flaws with this new idea. So we would try to shoot it down. And that means for the person who brings up this idea, this is a lot of mental effort to justify this idea and it's not constructive. Constructive, I mean, is something different. If I take this idea and say, could you do this also with that idea? Have you thought about that? What about talking to this person over there? They've done something that could help you with that. That is a constructive discussion on that. So what I'm looking at is an honest and serious talk about that. Let's take an example. Let's say 15 years ago, a guy comes to you and tells you, hey, I have this great idea about a messaging service where you can send 140 characters to other people and tell them what you're doing. So 15 years ago, I would, like everyone would have said, what the heck? Who needs that? Yeah? Who would use that? How did you even get into my door here? Yeah? Who let this guy in here? Yeah. Now, this would be the natural reaction, and I say I would often react like that too. But what you try to say is, okay, take a moment, take a break, and then take this idea and say, what could you do with it? What would you do? Who would use that? What would you say? Can you nail down something to that thing? Yeah. What would it mean on a platform? How could we verify that? Yeah. What about this other guy who uses SMS? What about that guy who, I don't know, use Skype as messaging service, as tools that were there? How would this differ? Yeah. And then suddenly you see, I have a discussion. I have a constructive discussion, and the idea owner, the person who had this idea, gets clues and help and feedback that is constructive and not negative. Yeah. And I think that is probably the largest one. Also, I recently read something that was very interesting. As a startup founder, you need only one person to say yes. One venture capitalist. You go to 20 venture capitalists, and only one person has to say yes. I found it. I give you $50,000 or $500,000, and you're good to go. When you do that in a corporation, you can have 19 people who tell you, yes, do that, but one person in the hierarchy says no, and your project is dead. Yeah. So Amazon apparently, with Jeff Bezos, they installed such a thing that they said basically you need one person inside the company with a budget that tells you yes, and you go. 19 people, other managers can say no, yeah, but one person says yes, and you're good to go with that project. Yeah, and so we don't have that kind of venture capital model inside corporations. There's always one in the hierarchy above who can kill it. Yeah, it doesn't matter how many people else you convince, and that I think is one of the important things to learn and to understand why innovation mostly dies in big corporations.
Yeah. I can so relate to that, because I have been to many investment rounds in the big corporation I've worked in, and then went to the last board, which was the highest board of that total company. And then it was, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
So you spend a year in preparing for that meeting, and then you get a maybe.
And it's demotivating. Yeah, you're not putting in the energy anymore, and you're looking for better pastures. Yeah, and then going to other companies, because this is really demotivating. And it's not that the people are stupid or so. Yeah, denying that, but they have so much stuff on their plates. They may not completely be cleared down in the trenches to understand that, and it's very difficult actually to understand a lot of stuff. It's risky because there's no clear path. It's not plannable. Yeah, innovation is not plannable. So this is, and if it's not plannable, it's not you cannot calculate the risk on that. So you need to create a culture, a structure inside the company where specific risks can be taken, with, of course, without taking down the house, also with learning from it. Yeah, and if you fail, really fail quickly. Yeah, so without spending too much money in endangering the company. This is this kind of smart failure that you wanna encourage him to. And the learning is important. Yeah, the learning is important, that you also communicated what is it where you fucked up. Yeah, why is the reason that this project failed?
Yeah, it's super important. So how deep do you go into your book into these topics? Is it really deeply rooted in the like culture of the country, of the history of the country, or where does it come from?
The culture is for me always this big word, which is composed out of little behaviors. Yeah. So what I'm trying to do in the book is to dissect culture into smaller behaviors, and culture, so to speak, then can change. So when you think back about Germany, for example, 200 years ago, Germany was always depicted as the schläfrige Michel, yeah, the sleeping Michael with the sleeping head, yeah, and then it became the Prussian, a very, very strict, disciplined person, which is still kind of a bit today, yeah. Also, about 1900, there was an Australian businessman going to a country, an Asian country, trying to build up a factory there, and in his letters home, he was complaining so much about the people there, that they're late, they're lazy, they're tardy, they are not working, they come like 3 hours late, and all this kind of stuff. It's never going to be. The country that he was talking about was Japan. Japan, where the train arrival is depicted in seconds. You have seconds on the clock and telling you when the train arrives. The Shinkansen, I think, the largest delay that they ever had was 1.5 minutes. 1.5 minutes. Yeah, this is not even registered as a delay in Austria and Germany.
That's that's normal.
That's all. So exactly. So this is a sign that you can change that. Now, in corporations, many people think, oh, we need to change the corporate culture. Yeah, and then they spend, like, let's say 10 million euro on changing the culture, but nothing comes out of that. And people always say, well, I would be innovative if just the others were just not so idiotic. And no, it actually starts with you. So often when I have delegations here, I bring the ugliest plush toy that I can find. And the reason is, when I'm on the way with them, they're not just observing stuff and, visiting people and meeting stuff, but also they're being observed. I observe them. I listen to their language. So if somebody says, oh, well, that could not work at us because the Labor Council would immediately be against it. Or just give this contract or this license agreement our legal department and they would just tear it apart. This way, they just close the discussion. So I give them the uglier plush toy as a very visible symbol, and of course they don't want to have it, and ask them, okay, rephrase that sentence. And the sentence could be very easy. It could be something like, how could we get it done with the Labor Council, that they are on board with it? Or what could be a license agreement that our legal department would be fine with, with less risk, still risk, but less risks than original. And that invites for a discussion. Now, the person who holds this ugly plush toy as the first time is now listening even more closely because they want to get rid of it and hand it over to the next person. So they start listening to how they use language. And often this choice of language and the sentences is something that stops innovation or discourages innovation. I often have had, maybe as a little anecdote, I had a group of 50 people from an insurance company, a large German, Austrian insurance company, and the CEO of the local of Austria was here. And I didn't know who the CEO was. I explained the rules and they started. First question comes, was negative. I handed over the plush toy. Who was the guy? The CEO. So his employees were all rolling on the floor because he wanted to encourage innovation, but he discouraged it. And so they were starting to listen. Now, just to complete this story, the plush toy, this ugly plush toy, often ends up with me because I'm from Vienna and we're always complaining. So people that listen so much that they hand it over to me because I'm complaining too often.
But I love that. That's a cool game. I will implement that as well in a couple of settings I'm doing. Thanks for that. And I think that's something you can do even in board meetings. That would be fun.
Right. So it's also, of course, what helps here is when you have a delegation here, it's like a school field trip, for them. So adults, 50, 60 years old, 40 years old, they turn into kids. They need to, I need to go pee-pee. Or can I smoke now? Or I lost my passport. I forgot my passport over there. So and you know, this is a relaxed atmosphere. A lot of new impressions. They are sitting with people that they may have not talked yet or not never met. Yeah. So and then they go through all the same experience, and I try to often make it fun also. So it's really like a field trip for those people, and so this is another there's a way to make it more humorous. Yeah. And then people actually get so much used to this. Well, I think I take the toy because I have to say something negative, yeah. Or other people are calling out toy. So you see, it becomes a fun thing, but it also gives helps the people to pay more attention to the language, and that is actually, I think, one of the most important things: language and behaviors. So that's why I read threads through all my books, and when I look at technologies, is always, how are we talking about that, and how are we behaving around that, and how it changes, how does it change our behaviors?
Yeah, it's brilliant. I could talk like 2 hours more with you, but I would like to get into, you're launching, or how do you say that, launching 2 books in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, the 2 books are coming out in the next 2 weeks.
Tell us a little bit about that. So I want to enable you to share a little bit.
Yeah, so it's more random that suddenly 2 books are coming out. One book is called Future Angst, which Angst, the German word for anxious, being afraid of something. Yeah. And we are always talking about the German Angst, that we see first the risks and the dangers of something. And so I said, actually, it's really about change in the future. Yeah. And I'm looking at that and said, you know, when we look at the DAX index, the German stock index, and the 30 companies that are listed there, 24 of those companies are older than 100 years. That's the same in France and in Sweden. But in the US, it's the oldest company. There's only one company that's older than 100 years, and it is General Electric, the Thomas Edison company. And everyone else is like less than 40, 45 years. So there's a lot more going on there. And I said, about 150 years ago, Germany was the Silicon Valley of the world. All these companies that we're talking about, like Bosch, Siemens, Daimler, Allianz, came out of this Gründerwelle, this wave of companies being founded after 1870. Daimler, look at that, 1886, and so on. And why are we not able to have new companies coming up there, grow in size significantly? What's going on there? And we are knowing also that these companies that we are talking about here all basically built into mechanical engineering, Maschinenbau, so to speak, or chemical pharmaceutical companies, etc., such industries. But digital industries, we're nowhere. The only company from Germany that is a significant player worldwide is SAP. The company is also already turning next year 50 years. It was founded in 1972. And why do we not have more of those role models of those companies coming out? I mean, we were leading also in computers, in computer chip technology, and so on. Just think of Nixdorf. Just think of Zuse, first computers that we had. Think of Transrapid, magnetic levitation train that we are not building. The Chinese are building that. Hyperloop. We win. Our students at the Technical University in Munich win all the time those Hyperloop competition with their pods, but nothing is going on. We're not building a Hyperloop, and we would expect that these winning teams, the department at the university, at the Technical University, would basically be sought after speakers and show guests that shows, and that companies such as Siemens would just go ahead and just buy the entire department there, and hire them and build that. But no, it's not happening. So I'm looking at how did it happen that we got from being the Silicon Valley of the world, made in Germany, become the digital laggards. And so this is the book that comes out on August 19th. And then another book is, you mentioned the second book, is sorry, not sorry. It's a little bit different, but it also has to do a lot with language. And it's about the art of the non-apology. So you may have heard in the last weeks a few apologies from people. One was Angela Merkel apologizing for trying to schedule lockdown during the Easter holidays, where she apologized. This was a real good apology. That is one that ticked all the boxes, was also coming out of out of her heart. But then we had apologies such as the bicycle coach, the German bicycle coach at the Olympics, who tried to motivate one of his bikers by yelling slurs about other bikers at him, from the Arab world. And he apologized, but the apology was not an apology, really, because he basically excused that slur by reasoning that it was in the heat of the action that he did that, so it's okay. Yeah, no, it's not okay. It's never okay. It is not. When I say it's not who I am, no, it's exactly who you are, because that's why you used it. Yeah. So in this book, I bring a lot of examples of such apologies that are actually not apologies, and I have 40 categories. 40 different so-called artifices, Kunstgriffe, 40 ways of how to not apologize properly. and then, as a bonus, I have 8 ways of how to get somebody to apologize to you. Because
that's cool.
If you don't want to apologize, just let somebody stumble into mistakes so that they have to apologize to you, so that you have less need to apologize for your own faults.
That's brilliant. So when is that coming out?
Next week on August 12th. So it's they're in German. I tried to get the Sorry Not Sorry book translated into English, because I have a lot of course, American and in English examples, and I think it's I tried to write it more humorously from the perspective of somebody who screwed up. So the subtitle is actually 40 artifices for morons, for ministers, managers, and other morons who screwed up and don't know what all the fuss is about.
That's cool. Yeah, and I guess the podcast will come out after that, so I can put the links as well to the books that people can find.
Everywhere you can get it at the publisher or at Amazon or any bookstore that you have.
Yeah, awesome. So let's get into the last part of the podcast, which is a couple of rapid fire, but not so rapid fire questions. Question number 1, which is the biggest one. If you have the possibility to work with a project or be part of a project that is impacting every human being on Earth, what project would it be, and why would you work with that?
Yeah, it's definitely artificial intelligence. The reason for that is it is a general purpose technology. That means it can be used in every industry, in every aspect, in every field, in every human field. And it brings us multiple advantages. We are more and more complex societies. We are 7-8 billion people right now. Yeah, we're probably growing up to 10 billion people. Our challenges are becoming more and more complex. That means we need more and more intelligence. And we will be leveling off at 10 or 11 billion people in the world before we go down again. So this is a huge issue that we have. That means the number of intelligence, the intelligences that we have in our brains and the connected intelligence through teamwork is not expanding. But we are in a certain intelligence space that our brain, that humans can cover. And we realized that with artificial intelligence, this intelligence, so to speak, is very different. It's like dogs have a different intelligence, dolphins, ants have different intelligences, but the entire intelligence space is much, much larger, and we occupy only a small portion of that. And now we build intelligent machines where we could cover a lot more of this intelligence and bring that to our use. And this way, we are able to better solve all these challenges or attack those challenges that we are facing, like climate crisis, like hunger, poverty, all these Männerschnupfen, men's coughs, so we need every piece of intelligence that we can get. So I think this is one of the most important technologies that humans ever created.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Next question is, where will you be in a year from now? And you can answer that on personal and or business world.
Personally, well, I'm probably not. I'm just moved, so I have just put all my books up there and whatever. So I'm happy to have for the next year not to move any books. I just will add books to that. Professionally, I am working on some very different type of book that comes out in a year, and that book is about how technologies such as internet technologies are being used to attack certain types of demographics. That means in this case, the working title is When Mammuts Fart. When Mammuts furzen. Yeah. Sounds gross. I know. Sorry for that. But it's about actually how women and men are being patronized, attacked, and gaslighted on the internet by mostly male mobs, and what we can do against it, about it. Yeah. So this is for me also, again, behaviors on technologies, in this case, unintended consequences, and what could be solutions to that. Yeah. And solutions are not just technical solutions. Solutions are also legislative, awareness. Yeah. Becoming knowing that it's actually not a problem that women have to struggle with and that's their fight. No, it's actually something that is something relevant for men, for police officers, for judges, for lawmakers, in that we should more talk about that, become aware and change our minds on that. And so you see already, this is a very delicate and very emotionally charged topic, if you look at that. And the interesting thing, I think, is I write it as a man addressing other men. Yeah, it's a selfish thing because I'm sick and tired of men attacking women on the internet and silencing their voices and even going physical sometimes. Yeah, because I think we need this intelligence. We need those people. We need women to contribute ideas and help us and make the world better. Men alone cannot do that. Yeah, and I'm basically also, as a man who's not like the male mob, being judged on those things. Yeah. And I said, no, I want to help and support that. And it could easily also, I could become a target. You could become a target. Other men are becoming targets like that. And what can we do about that? So it's a demographic problem. Yeah. It's a problem of society. And so far we have not properly dealt with that. And technologies such as social media are unfortunately reinforcing and helping to reinforce that, and what can be done. Yeah, and that is so you see, this is a very difficult topic. It's also difficult to talk to women who were attacked, because for them also it's this traumatic experience, and then I come in as a man and want to ask them and basically relive that again, and this is of course for them often not a pleasant conversation then, even if they see the good intention, but for them is they just want to move on often.
Yeah, get that. But I agree, it's super valid and very, very important topic to bring on the table and explore more.
Yeah. And again, I as a man have to write that because there are a lot of women writing about that, but everyone who attacks them, it's just women. Yeah. So no, I have to talk as a man to man. Yeah, and say you better fuck off. Yeah, doing that. What you're doing is not correct. Yeah, and to also show basically present and say men are not okay with that. Yeah, we are also not okay with that. And here's what we're going to do. And we need the women in this case also to give us guidance, us men, of how they want to be helped. So it's not that I'm fighting that fight on behalf of the women coming as the white knight and then basically again patronizing women, but I'm here to support them, Now let me know of how you want to be. What could be something that I could help you to solve that or to stop that. Yeah. And I think we need, in this case, listening to the women, what they expect, what they want, and that is what I'm working on.
Great one. So last official question. How do you keep yourself informed on topics that interest you?
So I read first really a lot of books. I have about 3,000 books. I had last year read 80 nonfiction books. I try to have a diversity of stuff to read, not only newspapers, magazines, online articles, research papers, but books also. And then not just one always about artificial intelligence or one about autonomous cars. Of course, I do that too, but every other book that I read, for example, has to be a book that has nothing to do with what I'm doing or have done in the past. So I'm reading books about primate research. Yeah, I'm reading books on Leonardo da Vinci. Yeah, or Disney, Walt Disney biographies. Yeah, or what do I have here of how to reason? Yeah. Or Gamergate, yeah, that's currently a research topic for my book, yeah. Gamergate, where women were attacked in the gaming scene, yeah. And often those books that are totally unrelated give me the most important impulses and ideas for the next book. Future Angst, for example, came out of the Leonardo da Vinci biography, and where he was trying to figure out of how the tongue of the woodpecker works. Yeah. And I thought, how funny, yeah, that was his to-do list. How does the tongue of the woodpecker? But then I thought that's a perfect metaphor for when I have a delegation and they are afraid of Alexa. Yeah. So that's how I get. This is one part. And then of course being in the Silicon Valley, seeing these things, living among those people, working in these companies and talking to them, going for coffee with them is another very important thing, because listening to them of how to talk about those things, and I'm not being from that industry, often gives me an interesting spin. I may give you one example. Recently, I was with an Austrian startup founder, a woman, microbiologist, here, I think she's a chemical engineer going into microbiology here. And she's looking at food, meat, how to grow meat out of cells, cell-cultured meat. So not to grow the cow, but take a cell, grow it out of that and have a steak. Yeah. She got several $1 million in venture capital, started there. And so we were talking about, and then she said, this is just one thing. I have another idea where I actually want to go. And that is growing artificial, think of growing skin. And not just skin or meat for your hand, but put it on a robot. Yeah. So wow.
Yeah, that's cool.
That makes total sense. Yeah. You see, and I went there, I had no idea about cell cultures. I know, only what I read in the newspapers. I have tried that. I've eaten Impossible Burgers and Beyond Meat and this kind of stuff. Yeah, I like it. But these are made out of plants. And she's culturing that out of cells. Yeah. But she thought already one step ahead. And then you think immediately Terminator, because the Terminator you see him also having this artificial grown meat on that. I said, well, it could be actually a really great thing, because when you think about that, suddenly you could put nerve cells in there. How about that? Yeah. And the full circle goes then that why? Because we're looking at robots, because we're looking at artificial intelligence, we look always at the models of us. Yeah. How does our brain work? What are emotions? Yeah. What are feelings? What is pain? What are all the things that we do, or animals? And suddenly we get better understanding or get new questions on how humans work. Yeah, and other questions are coming up and also admiration of how fantastic we are as when you look at it, because we want to construct that thing and we're not able to do that. And I think that is the whole picture here, that you read about primates, how they behave, you read about robots, you read about cell-cultured meat and talk to somebody. And once you start making this dot, it becomes so much fun. And so, wow, it could be really, really interesting and exciting.
Yeah. I need to maybe go to Silicon Valley for a couple of years as well to get into that. It's fascinating.
Or come visit for a few days, for a week or two, a month. Yeah, and,
definitely. That's going to happen.
Yeah.
So, how can people find you? How can people reach out to you?
Oh yeah, just search for my name, Mario Herger, Google for that, or go on technophilosoph.com. It's my main site. Or if you are more interested in the cars, there's always the last driver's license holder has already, the last driver's license holder.com is my website. So I have multiple websites on specific topics. So that's how you can reach out. My books you find on the bookstores, the online bookstores, at the publisher, or in your favorite bookstore in the local town. You can get them there too.
Awesome. Mario, thank you very much for spending your morning with me and my evening. Was a pleasure talking to you and looking forward to read your books. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jens, for having me today.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. You will find the links and resources in the show notes of this episode. If you would like to support the podcast, the most impactful thing you can do is subscribing to the show on any of the podcasting platforms and give me a review. This will help me to reach more innovators around the world and bring some of you into the show. If you have any question to the guest or want to engage with me, feel free to reach out to me on my public WhatsApp at +49 151 7033 1176. I will repeat, +49 151 7033 1176. It's all WhatsApp, texting only. Or follow me on social media and contact me there. And finally, if you look for someone educating you or your team on innovation culture coaching, have a look at heitlandinnovation.com. Thanks, and see you in the next episode.